in feeding. My name is Mindy Ellsworth. I'm a registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator. And just a word on the slides that I will be using tonight, that these are copyrighted. So any photographs or sharing these online without specific permission from the Ellen Satter Institute is prohibited unless you want to contact them. And disclosure, I am a faculty member at the Ellen Satter Institute. I have received honoraria for speaking engagements in the past. Tonight I'm presenting this on behalf of the Waverly Health Center. And tonight, this is our agenda. To learn how to do the best job with feeding, how to help children grow up to be competent eaters, and how to manage some of the more common feeding concerns. We've had some technical difficulties here tonight, so you may hear me flipping my pages because my speaker's notes didn't work, so I'm balancing the microphone and the slide advancer and my pages. So this is quite a task. So as the title suggests, this is an introduction, and it actually may raise more questions and concerns as we go through this. I do plan to leave some time at the end to answer some questions, but I will do my best to answer those at the end of the presentation. And know that I will also provide resources for those of you online. We do have some handouts available. There's about 6 of them if you wish to explore this further. So what's your destination tonight? What was your goal and what are you hoping to achieve? Are you hoping to achieve a healthy eater? Maybe better nutrition? Oops. I got introduced to animations with this and I might have gotten a little bit carried away throughout the presentation. But, so if your goal is to achieve a healthy eater or maybe better nutrition for your children or grandkids or whoever you may be thinking about, or maybe you just haven't thought about it very much. Tonight I hope to provide you a roadmap to help you figure out how you should feed your child, what are the best practices, and some of the barriers and hurdles we face as parents. But it never goes as smoothly as we plan it to be. I was introduced to the Satter Division of Responsibility, and I will, instead of saying all of that, I might just refer to it as SDOR. So just know that that's what I'm referring to. But I heard about this over 25 years ago. Reading the book, Child of Mine, written by Ellen Satter, while I was pregnant with my son, and knowing that this was how I wanted to raise him with eating. There were times at the dinner table I really wanted to praise him for trying new food, but I just tried to contain that excitement to myself. At one point, my husband actually tried to coerce my son to eat something, called it Reuben Back to the Future. And I just knew in my gut that that was not right, to coerce him using Back to the Future, since he was into that at the time, to try this casserole. It wasn't always perfect, but my picky eater is now a 24-year-old competent eating adult. So the journey for some kids, it's this nice smooth line, and I'm going to be using this road analogy all throughout my talk tonight. There might be some curves in the road, but nothing too wild. These children tend to be pretty easy to feed, they love to try new foods, they're not picky, and they'll throw a lot of tantrums at the table. But there are other children that are not so easy to feed. They're more challenging. We have potholes, we have three-way intersections with no stoplights, we have bumps in the roads, and the GPS stops working. Mealtimes often feel like a battle, challenging them to eat, and parents find themselves working hard to get their child to eat. And mealtimes are not that smooth, easy road that we saw on the previous slide. So our destination with this topic tonight is to go on a journey achieving eating competence for our children. The SDOR framework was developed by world-renowned feeding and eating expert Ellen Satter, who has over 4 decades of research indicating that it works and is the best approach to feeding children. The tricky part is that parents must learn to trust that children are capable of learning to eat a variety of foods and to participate appropriately in family meal times. The concept of SDOR is very simple, but it's not always so easy to implement. And then my screen just went blank. Okay, so my animations aren't working correctly. So eating competence is associated with good health outcomes. Emotional health, positive physical health, nutritional health, and a normal relationship with food. An eating competent child, the Satter eating dynamics model is rooted in trust. At its core, which trusts that adults and children will do their job in feeding and eating. If adults trust in a child's capabilities and follow Satter's division of responsibility, the child can become an eating competent, according to Satter. The eating competent child will feel good about eating. They will enjoy meals and join in appropriately. They also know how to behave, well, within reason. A 2-year-old or a 3-year-old will not always know how to behave at a meal, but they will learn. They're engaged at meal times, and they feel good about being included with others. And they pick and choose from the food provided and ignore the food they don't want. In other words, they're okay with foods that they've never seen before and don't make a big fuss about it. And they gradually sneak up on new food and learn to like it. They eat as much or as little as they are hungry for at any given time, and only that they know how much that is. And they grow in a way that nature intended, and that means they grow to be different sizes and shapes. Children who are eating competent will grow well according to their genetic predisposition. But it can be difficult for adults to trust a child to try new foods, to meet their nutritional needs, and grow in a way that nature intended without intervening. In order to raise a competent child, eating competent child, we first as parents need to understand that what is normal child behavior. And don't pathologize that. For example, giving the label of picky eater, not making it a problem when it just may be how that child acts. Note that this can also look different at different ages and stages, for example, a newborn versus a toddler. But tonight we'll mainly focus on discussing toddlers through adolescence in general. Children with neurodivergence can grow up to be eating competent, but there may be some difference in how this looks for them. While it is outside the scope of this presentation, there are some ESI webinars devoted to some different topics. It's typical for children to eat a lot one day and very little the next. Or maybe only eat a few foods in a meal. And maybe suddenly tired of those favorite foods they've been eating for the last 7 days. Or to sit at the table but not sit still. Some kids just need to wiggle. And they should enjoy being at the table, but they also want to get down when they're full. And rarely eat a new food. Usually it takes about 10 to 20 exposures to a new food before a child will eat it. We all have the ability to regulate our hunger cues intrinsically, based on metabolism, illness, low hunger, day, or activity. And we need to trust that children have that ability to feed themselves appropriately. We seek pleasure in meals with the taste, the flavor, the texture, and positive family meals, and participate in family conversation. And appetite. The appetite is not the what, is the what, not the quantity we are hungry for, and children will naturally move toward variety if given the chance or opportunity to try new foods, which will ensure nutritional adequacy. Things that might interfere with appetite might be a child's temperament. Some children do not like a lot of variety very quickly, or it might be the feeding practices of the adult caregiver. And social interactions. Pleasurable family meals and connecting with loved ones supports the development. The scientific evidence for this approach is very strong. And it's all based on trusting those instincts within our children. And it was developed by Alan Satter. The Satter Division of Responsibility in Feeding, or SDOR, is part of the Satter feeding dynamics model. And if you're wondering about the research, I've just put a few on here that kind of highlight, that support the SDOR. Some of these are a little bit older. One of these is from 1984, published in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association. And it studied a child from 2 weeks to 9 months. And what they did was they tracked the formula intake and found that the caloric intake of that child could vary as much as 300%. As solids were introduced, that same child decreased their formula intake, while calories remained the same and were made up of calories taken from solid foods. The child naturally developed or adjusted his formula needs based on his intake of calories from solid foods. Given the freedom to regulate his own caloric needs, this child was able to get his calorie needs met, but it just didn't look the same from day to day. Growth was appropriate and followed the 50th percentile. I wish I could have found a clear picture from the study that just showed how wide those food jags were in this child, because it really highlights what was going on. Another one actually performed at the University of Iowa in 1975, where several infants were fed different concentrations of formula from about 6 weeks old. Some were given a low-calorie formula, which was actually diluted, and others were given a high-calorie formula, which is concentrated. But they found that the children who received the diluted formula ended up eating more to meet their caloric needs, and the ones that were fed the concentrated formula could consume less to regulate their calorie needs. Today, we would not be able to do the same study. And the last one that I'll highlight that talks about appetite driving the variety was in 1928 in the Canadian Medical Association Journal. Another study we would not be able to replicate took place in an orphanage. And what they did was offered all the children different trays of foods, and kids would point out what they wanted. In other words, self-selecting the foods. They all received the correct ratio of calories, protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals. They had no issues of constipation, and meals were often only one food or a little bit of everything. But they were able to use their appetite to drive their ability to choose different foods from meal to meal, and all the babies thrived. What was interesting, and I may need to reread this, but the babies with rickets would often select cod liver oil when given the ability to self-select. So children will adjust their intake to meet their nutrient needs. So when parents don't trust, a child might feel like a fight is happening, or you might want to think of a time when you were younger. Were you ever forced to eat a food you didn't enjoy eating? Or were you ever forced to take a tasting bite of a food before you could have more of the food that you really wanted? Or were you made to wait at the table for long periods at meals? Attempting to control the child's food intake or trying to get them to eat certain types of food, regardless of our good intentions, does not work. It also leads to mealtime struggles and distress, along with other consequences, including eating disorders or disordered eating and a negative relationship with food. Oops. I'm just going to read this quote. Sandy Maxwell is on the ESI faculty, and she just put this very well. The idea that we can control any biopsychosocial aspect of another human is pretty unrealistic and ultimately a poor goal. It is based on the premise that we know what a child is experiencing and feeling in their body better than they do, including sensations of hunger and fullness, appetite, or the desire to eat a food that is particularly appealing at that particular time. Feelings of tiredness or alertness, general wellness, and other factors that impact what and how much a child eats at any given time. And if we just try to understand that eating is a skill just like everything else in our life that we need to teach our children. And our children want to learn. Our children want to be just like us. Exploring, observing, connecting with others at meals, and seeking new food experiences is how they learn to eat. And like any new skill, it takes time, practice, and a foundation of safety. And as adults, we can nurture a child's curiosity in enjoying their food. Feeding is parenting. There's nothing inherently wrong with your child. It's important for the parent to know and trust their child's temperament and abilities by noticing and responding to learning that is taking place.
This is a breast cancer. Come on in.
No, this is a speaker series right now.
What's the breast cancer?
The breast cancer one is in the Carson Grubin room downstairs.
I'm sorry.
I'll just keep on going with this. So eating is a skill that we can teach our children. Anything about the learning journey is different for different children, like learning how to rollerblade or ride a bike or learning to swim. Some kids are more adventuresome and others are more cautious throughout the learning process. Think of the kid that goes to the pool for the first time or goes to the lake. One might just want to even dip their toe in the water, and the other one does a cannonball off the deck. So learning skills will equate this to learning how to hit a ball with a bat. Keep in mind the child's temperament and their learning style. For some kids, physical skills come easily to them, and it won't be too stressful. For other kids, it might be more like the terrible road that we saw. For other children, it might be just a completely different experience. And bring the teaching to their skill level. Developmentally appropriate, provide the bat and the ball for their age group. A bat that is their size and a wiffle ball might be more appropriate. Also, you don't need to teach them all the rules of baseball. There's so much information, you just need to teach them how to stand and how to swing the bat. And then you want to give them more opportunities to learn and practice. A child can't be expected to perform right off the blocks. And again, we need to trust that your child will learn, and eventually they will learn. These same principles can be applied to feeding children. Understand your child's temperament. Are they slow to warm up, or do they need a lot of encouragement and coaching? Or are they low energy, or are they eager to jump right in? Some kids love change, new textures, smells, visual things, how to cut a sandwich. And make sure that these tasks are developmentally appropriate. Provide them with the food that is appropriate for their age. Or are they too young to use a spoon or a fork? Or maybe they can't use a spoon or a fork very well. Banging it on the tray table is absolutely fine. That's how they learn. Are the foods of the right texture? Can they chew and swallow? Can they interact with the food in the way that is appropriate for them? And giving them opportunities to learn. Don't make assumptions that after one exposure to a food, that the child will never eat that again. Over time, they may learn to like a food with repeated exposures, but there may be some foods that maybe they just don't like, and that's okay. And we need to trust that our child will learn. They should be able to eat and participate in family meals if we give them the structure that they need. And then going back to my roadmap analogy at the beginning of the program, trust is a two-way street, and we can use SDOR as our roadmap. And this is our guide for how we get to eating competence, which is our destination. Once we can trust a child's instincts, we understand their temperament and learning style. Implementing SDOR provides a supportive eating environment where parents take the leadership of feeding, and children are given the autonomy of eating. Parents do the what, when, and where, and the child can choose from the foods that have been offered how much, and whether to eat or not. SDOR is evidence-based and considered best practice by the American Academy of Pediatrics, the USDA Food and Nutrition Program, and both have adopted the division of responsibility as their primary recommendation for feeding children. It is highly effective and can be used with a wide variety or with other potential health complications, such as diabetes, ADHD, autism, food allergies or sensitivities, and picky eaters. Again, our job for the parents are the what, when, and where. Our destination is eating competence, and notice there's two distinct sides. One is the parent job, and the other is the child's job. And the jobs of both are to stay fully in their lane and not cross that double yellow line. With the parent jobs, we decide what we're going to have, when are we going to have it, and where we are going to have it. By providing this structure, the child can begin to trust that they can do their jobs. The child jobs are how much they are going to eat from what you have provided, or they may not choose to eat anything at all. But if you have provided the structure, then it is up to the child to choose how much or whether. This slide brings up a lot of questions, such as what if this happens, or what if that happens, or roadblocks. We will be talking a little bit more about those topics in more depth later on, and then discussing some of those roadblocks. But if either the child or the parent doesn't stay in their lane, then we have crashes. So what is served the parent job? We should decide what food comes into the house and what is at each meal. Offer everyone the same food at meals. And make sure you're not just serving one food. They need variety, including toppings or dips, or choosing foods that are your preference. Consider what your child might eat and make sure that they have something at each meal that your child will eat. We call these foods core foods, or as Jenny Harris from ESI would say, filling but not thrilling. This might be something like bread and butter, tortillas, or anything that your family generally includes at most meals and enjoys on a regular basis. This will reassure children that they will get enough to eat. Children can pick and choose from what you offer, and your child might end up eating just one thing, or they might surprise you. The goal is to let them pick and choose and serve themselves versus having you put it on their plate for them from what you have offered. Now, some younger children might have some difficulty using a serving bowl or utensil, and parents are welcome to help their child manipulate that. But do listen to what food the child is asking for, and don't add on or limit them in any way. And trust your child to learn. Your child may choose the foods at each meal to eat. Over time, they might be choosing more of the family foods that your family eats. Your child may never love a certain food, such as tacos, and everyone has their own preferences. So beware of bumps in the road. Don't fall into the trap of thinking your child isn't interested in or will never try new foods. They may be slow to warm up or have very strong taste preferences. What happens is when parents start to cater to that child and end up making an entirely separate meal, the expression "be considerate without catering." By having at least one food there the child will eat and adjust our expectations, it's okay that they only eat one food at a meal, and they don't have to eat all foods that is available. But over time, that child will move themselves along and be able to eat the family meals. What about the child that begs for sweets? If it's not time for a sweet, then maybe appease that child by saying, okay, let's write that down and plan to have that for a snack or a meal at a later date, or have it for a dessert. But just acknowledge their feelings and that they are disappointed when they don't get what they want, and that those feelings are valid. And write it down so that they feel that they have been heard. As for tantrums, not in my expertise level, So I did find a good resource. It's called Good Inside, is a website to look for those. I didn't have that strong little child, so and it's normal for all children to have different preferences. What we don't want to happen is for you to become a short order cook and have to cook 3, 4, or 5 different meals, making sure everybody gets what they want. Instead, come back to your job as a parent, and that is to decide what is going to be served at meals. As long as you provide one food your child or children can eat, you have done your job. We also have a saying at the table that we never yuck somebody else's yum.
Mindy, there's a question.
Yes.
What if the only food the child likes isn't calorie heavy and doesn't fill them up?
That's a good question. Yeah. I'm trying to decipher if this is
Like watermelon, for
like
example.
watermelon.
Yes.
You know, serve watermelon.
And let them have as much as they want.
As much as they want.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're also offering all the other foods that the family eats.
Yeah.
You know, and if they're slow to warm up to food, they will gradually start accepting different foods. You know, the first time they may put it on their plate and not eat it. Second time they may lick it, and that's it. But it takes a lot of different exposures to a food, and that's how they learn to eat different food. I know as a parent you just cringe when you see that that's all they're eating, but have faith that it will, or trust is the overriding word here, that they will move themselves along. You're just giving them the opportunities to try different foods. But if watermelon is their saving food, ours was bread and butter. Let's see, don't have time. SDOR doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the content of what you serve in meals or what other families serve at meals. It can be home cooked, it can be ready to eat, fast food, breakfast for dinner, cereal and fruit. What matters more is the structure that you're offering, a variety of foods at meals. I was never beyond having a frozen pizza available to have just in case for those nights. And it was a meal, but we would also serve other things along with it, like a salad or a bowl of fruit. We always had milk. So the cook's job is done when the meal goes on the table. And I have lost my handouts. How to complete that.
Okay.
Sorry, another little technical difficulty. I lost the rest of my handouts. Can you focus just on the computer screen?
Yep.
And I'm going to pull up the
Yep, and
speaker's notes.
Mindy, I can edit all of this too, so, like the video, so.
So after this is up to the eaters. Parents get to prepare the foods they like, and children learn to eat the foods that the parents eat. So be considerate without catering. Children do much better with a schedule of meals and snacks. The parent schedules the meals and sticks to that schedule. No handouts between meals. For example, if a child comes up to you and asks you for a handout, just tell them we're having a snack in 30 minutes, or dinner's going to be ready in 15 minutes. And your child should be okay to sit in hunger for that short time. But it doesn't have to be a rigid schedule. And we know this is especially true for neurodiverse children who benefit from having that structure. But it should be similar from day to day. I can count on having 3 meals and 2 snacks, or 3 meals and 3 snacks at about the same time of day. And I usually try to space them out so it lets them start feeling their hunger between meals. So if I have them have a snack an hour before the meal, I know the next meal isn't going to go someplace. And then we may need to flex to accommodate sports and activities and whatnot. Save caloric drinks like milk and juice for meals and snacks. Having juice between meals fills your child up and it offsets their appetite cues. And when they get to the next meal or snack, they're not as hungry and they may not eat the food that is served or anything at all. So you want to take the lead. Instead of asking, are you hungry? Give them a heads up. Oftentimes kids are so engaged in the play activities that they're doing that they're not really turning into those hunger cues. Give the child the opportunity to step aside from what they're doing, and just interrupt them and say, this is going to happen in 10 minutes, a snack or a meal. A meal definition, which is pretty well established by the ESI crowd, is a meal is when everyone sits down together, sharing the same food or paying attention to each other. And it may not look the same for all families. Some families are sitting around a table. Others may be sitting around a blanket on the floor and enjoying the meal together, but as long as they're paying attention to each other, the TV has been turned off, there's no screens. They could also be eating on the couch as a family, but there shouldn't be distractions or the child will not be able to tune into their appetite cues and therefore eat less. It should be in a designated location that you as the parent decide, and set expectations that food will not be consumed in bedrooms, or maybe your teenager may only want to eat in the bedroom. So you can expect that your child will eat if you have set up that structure. You as an adult will be showing trust and respect when you accept the child's role, which is deciding whether to eat and how much. And this could be difficult for some parents to accept. However, it is common for children to eat different amounts, day to day and meal to meal, or to eat nothing from the meal at times, depending on their stage of growth, activity level, and other factors. Trying to override a child's choice can cause harm to the feeding relationship. It's basically saying, I don't trust you in your lack of hunger. You must eat, and I'm going to try to do anything to make that happen. And this is why the routine of meals and snacks is so important. It will help them from becoming too hungry or too difficult for them to manage their emotions. By responding to their internal cues, a child will grow predictably. I have to say my experience with this was so freeing to know that this was the way to feed my child. And I didn't have so much anxiety about whether he ate or not, knowing that he would do everything he can to survive, to eat, and to grow. So you'll probably notice that trust was probably on almost every side, but this underpins our successful feeding experiences in children. When adults trust children to eat the food they offer and grow in a way that nature intended, they will give their children the freedom and ability to eat what and how much is right for them. An exception to the how much rule. And this brings in the question of desserts. So when serving desserts, and you should serve desserts, whatever your family enjoys, serve them with meals. But limit that dessert to a single serving most of the time. And I'll explain most of the time in a minute. So have a portion of dessert at the meal, for example, a cookie. Set that out for everyone and let them choose whether they eat it first, at the end, or they might choose not to eat it at all. Surprise, surprise. Serve it with a meal so they don't have to earn it. That way it takes sweets, because we don't have to learn how to like sweets, most of us. It takes it off its pedestal and it neutralizes it. And occasionally, you might want to have an all-you-can-eat. That fresh batch of cookies, put out a tray of cookies with a glass of milk and say, have as much as you want. Now, doesn't that sound dangerous? If repeated often enough and treating dessert this way and neutralizing it, you will be very surprised at how children react to this. A lot of parents are really afraid to do this, as they think their child will just eat them all and it would just be horrific to watch. If we haven't treated them this way or treated desserts this way, it may take some practice and several different exposures for them to figure out their stopping point. This way, when they go to birthday parties They won't be the kid that's hanging out by the cake, because they know they can have cake and they can handle their own hunger and appetite for that dessert on their own without a parent having to regulate it for them. And stick with it. This can be very difficult to implement, depending on how old your child is, especially if we're just going to implement this, and I do have some handouts on that too. Children will want to test the boundaries. Like, are you really not going to make me eat that vegetable? Or are you really going to let me have this dessert? And sometimes their eating does get worse before it gets better. Use a parent partner for accountability, and they may catch you where you're not sticking to your lane as a parent. And that goes back to my comment about the Reuben Back to the Future casserole. My son was very picky about trying new things. Very hard for him to look at that. He was in his Back to the Future phase, watching that movie. So my husband named it this, and I just had to bite my tongue, but you know what, it worked, and I just let it slide. It felt a little bit like we were taking some of his trust away. So make this your philosophy. Meals should be fun, enjoyable place for conversation. And SDOR can help bring back the joy to meal times. And this is my favorite quote of Ellen Satter: when the joy goes out of eating, nutrition suffers. So, how do you feel about trusting your children with their eating? Are you letting them do their job? Or are you stepping into your child's lane? Are you concerned that some children will not eat enough of the foods we want them to eat, such as fruits and vegetables? Or do you worry that some children will eat too much of certain different types of foods if you don't intervene and set up limits? Or do you think some children will never willingly eat vegetables? If your answer is no to these questions, you are well on your way to understanding the Satter approach to feeding. But if you are uncertain, which many people are, how to answer one or more of these questions, you're not alone. It can be difficult to trust children of any age to eat a variety of foods, or to eat as much as they need at any given meal, and to participate appropriately in family meals. Here are some resources from the Ellen Satter Institute. There are many more webinars present on there. There's also a series